JF, warm welcome to Startup Grind.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jens.
We met and we talked about AI, and we're really excited to dive into AI adoption because building with AI goes fast, but getting people and teams to actually use AI, that's a different challenge.
It is, absolutely.
You have a lot of experience with that. We're going to, of course, dive deeper into that. But before that, could you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yes, sure. So I'm Jean, and I'm based in Stockholm, as we said. I was trained as an economist and worked for the World Bank, worked for the UN, and switched to AI very quickly in about the year 2000 with an AI startup in finance, and it was way too early, and that's how you learn. It worked somehow. We could align, and it's a bit of a spoiler on what's happening, when we could align what this startup was selling to the goals of the organizations. Then it was working all of a sudden really much. Then what I did is I kind of ping-pong between large corporations and AI startups, and that's what I'm still doing today, working both for Vattenfall, which is a large energy producer and distributor in the Nordics, and for my own startup, which is called Refocus on Goals.
Yeah, and having both that startup experience and the enterprise experience, because you work inside large organizations, and you also worked with startups as a startup trying to sell to large organizations. Yeah. So you've sort of seen firsthand where AI should succeed or where it does succeed, and also where they don't succeed. So if you take the first part, how would you describe the current state of internal AI adoption inside enterprises today?
Well, today we see really, and I think we will all agree, a maturity gap, increasing divergence between the companies that are merely experiencing with AI and those that truly are operating with AI as a core function. Of course, we've got some startups coming that were built on AI, and the pressure is high. However, as we know, a lot of people are still stuck into the pilot purgatory. And of course, we saw this report that had a tremendous impact last year from the MIT about the fact that 95% of pilots don't scale up and that they don't change the bottom line of the organization. Now there is this shift. I mean, I think 2025 was supposed already to be the year of the agentic AI, but it's coming now. And I think maybe it's a way to narrow the scope, to make sure that you have something which is more measurable, where you actually manage the input and output better. Maybe it's the same kind of pressure we see there as well. But truly, there is pressure from the board. They want something, they want ROI, they want to see operational impact rather than just cool proof of concept. And then what you need is also to make sure that you have the organization, that you can address the data, the information that is needed, and not just the brain, but also the body of the organization and how it's functioning.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of very important words that I'm going to put into in the questions, because from your experience, what kind of breaks first? The technology, because yes, we talk about agentic AI, and is it useful, or is it the process or the organization? So from your experience, where's the biggest problem? The process, the technology, the organization, or the hype?
I think it breaks at the organization level. It's a question of culture. You need to have management on board. You need to have user adoption. Otherwise, I mean, it's the impact on the users. At one point, I mean, AI is a tool, just like all the projects we've been selling, like all the tools we've been selling. What do we solve? What do we deliver? To whom? And that remains a very important question, to which, if you cannot answer, then it's not going to happen. So I think success depends a lot about employees deducing that the AI is actually good for them, that it is reducing their friction, reducing their workload. And then, once this is fine, when this is agreed upon, you can actually go in for the process. Now, I think a lot of organizations underestimate the cognitive load, the fact that it's already difficult for people to access information, to be able to find the right information, to be able to work. And the data on this is really growing and more difficult. So if you add tools which are not well designed in that perspective, it's not going to scale.
Yeah, and you have a great point there in regards sort of to startups, their role. Some people just build something and hope that they're going to solve a pain point and people will love it, but you have to talk to the customer. Do you actually need it? And in what way do you need it? And is it safe? And so on. So, I mean, I think you touched upon it, but why does so many AI initiatives look successful on paper, but fail in day-to-day behavior?
Right. Well, the pilots are often very well designed and they show perfect result in what is, after all, a controlled, narrow environment. But then, it's about the complexity of daily operations that you want to have an effect. And if the AI starts to address data which are not perfect, which is very often the case, then what happens is that people need to verify. So not only do they need to do the job, but they need to actually work more. And it's a stress, it's a risk. And that happens very often. So that is clearly an issue, which results from the fact that your LLM distant, very big machine has been trained on data which are not your company data. It doesn't know your company data. It doesn't know how you operate, how you make money. It doesn't understand. And it's not going to understand unless it has, a lot of training. But very often that is not going to happen. So, it's about this discrepancy and this, again, cognitive load paradox. When it impacts trust, then, what you see is people using other AI than the ones that are inside the organizations. And then it's a risk. You're taking your data outside, you're compiling data. It's really not satisfactory at all.
And that's a really good point, because you said cognitive load, you get an answer, but can you really trust it? And the other one is, of course, that the shadow AI, people are using their private AI tools because the company hasn't allowed them. So based on all your experience, both from the enterprise and the startups, you developed a framework that is called Refocus on Goals that has mainly 4 pillars of user adoption. So that's kind of the next part. And so can you walk us through Refocus on Goals at a high level, and how do you get user adoption?
Right. So what we see is that for the past 20 years, we have been developing what's called the collaboration economy, the modern workplace, more and more teams, more and more SharePoint. And this was all very good in the beginning. However, and especially since COVID, it has really grown out of proportion. And this makes it very difficult for people to actually operate. And the search tax in large organizations is estimated to be between 1 and 3 hours a day per person, which has an enormous impact, not only on productivity, but also on, obviously cost, on alignment, on goals, on risk, as we already discussed a bit. So the 4 pillars that we propose in the framework, first of all, focus on the goals of the organization. What is it that we are trying to address? What is it that we are trying to do? Because that is everybody's, benefit to be able to work on this. So first, work on the goals, start from the management agenda, start from the projects, start from what's ongoing, and from there, onboard the users. So have a clear representation of the goals and what you bring as a value added in that perspective, and then bring in the users, and users will bring the data because they want to also to reach the goals. They also want to be able to deliver. So the framework is a set of method and tools that help you develop the goals and connect to the right data. And then in a 4th pillar is the iterative mode, because you need to constantly adapt to new goals, changing sets of data, and so on. So it's a very lively tool that allows everyone to be on one source of truth, one focus points for people to be able to deliver, which is very difficult in these large environments, in these big companies. You have information everywhere, and so you have users everywhere. So what we do is we make sure that there is one focal point for each goal, and everything can be done from there.
So the first pillar is the setting the goals according to the business goal. The fourth one was to experiment, and the 2 and 3, if you articulate them.
So yes, first one is the goal, not only the goal of the organization, but also the goals of the users. The second one is the data that need to be connected to the goals, because they are very difficult to find. It's really taking a lot of time. The third one is the users themselves and how they get the information. And the fourth one being the iterations. And we've deployed this framework with very good results, large ROI as well. And it's very fast, and it's really a tool that's helping the users to have a focus point for valid data and for this data to remain valid in time. So it's about also making sure that the data keeps being updated for the benefit of the users.
And when you put this in practice, these four, which one is sort of do organizations underestimate the most, and why?
Well, I think it's about the data. It's about the connection between the data and the users. People pay the bills. They see that they pay for more and more space, more and more data, and then they try to address that somehow. But they often fail to see how much effort is needed for users to just be able to find the right information. We've all been working in these collaboration environments, and it's true that it's often difficult to spot the latest version of a document, to spot the latest place where information sits, to post the latest SharePoint, which is relative to this theme. And it's like that in every single organization, and it keeps growing. So this invisible waste is complex. It's a vacation tax that nobody really wants to see. It's underestimated by organizations.
Yeah, and I can see that. I work with SharePoint, and sort of you should not save more than one version of the document, but you still do, and then you have that data problem. Like, how would the AI know which one is the actual one to look at or to send back? Yeah, and it's really good to have those 4 pillars to stand on. You also work for startups and selling to enterprises. So let's get practical on that side. So how can enterprises scale AI using common platforms like, for example, Microsoft 365 or Copilot or SharePoint or other tools? How should they think about it and organize data teams and access and so on?
Well, we're dealing with very large organizations, and Microsoft is delivering a set of tools which is supposed to fit everybody. And the LLMs are also delivering a set of capacities that are supposed to fit everyone. So I think it's really about the last mile. It's about adapting these tools, adapting these practices to the specifics of the customer, to the specifics of the industry, to the specifics of certain norms, maybe where you can deliver value. That's where you can actually make sure that you have a lot to deliver. The technology is, I think, going much faster than the organizations. It's changing every day. So the effort is not so much on that. I think the effort is much on making sure that the compatibility between the systems, the tools, and the readiness of the organization is really improving, that it's really scaling, and that, we're getting into that mode where, in fact, it's much easier to come in as a startup and deliver and be part of the game. And for sure, for that, management as an agenda is a good way to take it.
Yeah, and Microsoft's dilemma, I guess, also is that they need to be everything for everybody, and therefore it's hard to be something very sort of pointy. Is there something missing within that ecosystem that could be an opportunity for a startup to develop?
Well, it might be something that one could call the context gap. Microsoft 365, it's a very horizontal tool, and it lacks often the deep vertical knowledge on how a specific business makes money and how it unique processes the flows of information. Then what you have is identity and intent. AI currently knows what is in the file, but it doesn't really know who you are, what the context is, what is your specific goal, what is your role, and your strategic priorities. So I think that's where there is something to be done often. And what we try to do is to identify the missing links in the information flow where Copilot fails to connect the dots between the document and the strategic goal.
That's really good. The persona of who asking the question. If the person is working at HR and asking the HR document, they're probably asking for somebody else. If you're the employee, you probably want the answer about vacation or whatever. So I can see that, getting that extra context around the person into the query, so it becomes better. Microsoft now is not the only one who's doing this. You also have the Google's AI tool and Google Workspace, and you have OpenAI. And if you look at these other tools, what are the benefits or drawbacks, and what can we learn from them?
Well, on the Copilot side, what you have is clearly a very good governance. It does respect the native SharePoint team's permissions. Now, there is a lot of friction, and it clearly struggles to access data outside the Microsoft ecosystem. Google Workspace and Gemini has, become very strong. It has a very high information flow, massive context window, 1+ million tokens for synthesizing huge data sets. However, it does lack the feature depth required for complex financial and technical modeling. On the OpenAI, enterprise side, there is a lot of innovation. There is very high reasoning and agnostic connectivity across multiple silos. Now, the risk is to have shadowing and having an existing, external layer, making it very hard to anchor in the internal digital substrate. So
yeah, and the collaboration as well. I mean, I just heard recently Claude is now available in Excel. We come to this, how do we apply this? So if an enterprise team wants to improve AI adoption in the next, say, 90 days, where should they start?
Well, I think it's interesting to, first of all, look at the landscape. You can do an audit, map your critical workflows, and secure your permissions, fix the clogged arteries that you have in your body in order to prevent any kind of AI leakage. And then you can deploy on one task-specific agent with the intention to eliminate this verification tax and build a trust. And then I think it's a lot about measuring the time that is being saved before you expand and move from pilot to production. What we've seen is that when the framework is being deployed and that everyone has a clear view of what we are doing, what we're trying to address, where are the data, and what are the results, then it becomes viral. It becomes viral in organizations, and it's expanding. And then what you get is other teams coming and saying, we've got the same problem. We're also trying to deploy another type of AI, and can you help us? And then it goes like this. So if you have 90 days, I think it's more than enough to test and to, if you have in mind that your AI deployment is here to serve the goals of the organization and to make sure that the users are actually saving time, you're definitely on a good path.
And who would you say ideally should own that project within the organization? Is it business development or AI, IT, or HR? Who should drive it?
I think it should be the business. I think when you have either operational excellence projects, transformation projects, also maybe AI projects for sure, but you should definitely come in and into the flow of projects and make sure that your solution blends into the solutions that are being considered. And so, of course, it's good to have IT on your side, but more and more, I think it should shift towards business and be a business problem and business solution.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's because if you don't want it, you risk avoidance means maybe doing nothing, which is not that good. Now, if we flip the coin then and we look at from the startups side, so for a startup founder selling into AI into enterprises, what is the sort of biggest adoption mistake you see, or how should they best communicate their solution to an enterprise to be trusted and used?
Well, if you want to move out of the pilots, then certainly you have to also encompass the rest of the organization, not just management, not just the brain of the, but also the arteries, but also what constitutes the organization and the problems that we see and that needs to be addressed. If you want to win over the users, you have to take them into account. You have to see how your solution is going to change their day-to-day work, how they will save time, how they will save energy, how they will be able to gain from your solution. And this should be taken into account very early. Otherwise, you're not going to get the buy-in. So I think that's very important. And you need to adapt the speed to the extent to which your solution is being deployed inside the organization.
What I was thinking also is like when you meet an enterprise, you might meet the business side of the enterprise and you actually have a good conversation, but then you are transferred to the procurement side of the enterprise, which is often handled by maybe a different department. So how should a startup think to prepare for the procurement side of things?
Well, procurement is, it's interesting because AI is still new to them. I mean, it's new to everybody. It's new to us as well, right? But it's very difficult to measure the quality of AI. And so I think they also need the buy-in from inside the organization. They also need to see user adoption. It's a guarantee that whatever they are choosing is going to fit, it's going to be supported, and ultimately it's going to be a win. So I think that's the right approach, is to show the impact that you have had with other organizations or how you designed it to have an impact. And where the framework has been implemented, we've got, for an organization of 20,000 people, we have about 20 million euros ROI on 1 year. So eliminating the search tax, this 1 to 3 hours per day per user, is a big win. It is a way to already make sure that you are delivering. Then on the solution itself, we see more and more people, young people are coming into large organizations. They are used to use AI on a daily basis. They have 3, 4 different AIs that they use all the time. And then they get to work and the AI doesn't work. The AI that you have doesn't tell you, oh, who's in charge of this project? No. What's the budget for my department? Well, cannot tell you. Maybe it's a question of permission, but most of the time it's going to be a data issue. And we need a way to solve this and to make sure it's out of the way, because otherwise it's never going to happen.
Yeah, and I can see like people, bringing their own AI or using their private AI or using the enterprise AI, which doesn't have the context. So how do you balance speed with safety? What is your recommendation?
Well, safety and speed guardrails prevent governance gridlocks, allowing faster scaling through pre-approved trust. Sandboxes use restricted environments for rapid testing without external brand or data risk. Automated guardrails replace manual policy with hard-coded limits, for instance, human in the loop, high-stake actions. Least privileged AI limits agent access to specific tasks to secure the digital substrate. So yeah, you need to balance it, but the accent has been way too much on speed so far. Now it's much more, I think, on safety, but it's to build and to last, for sure.
Yeah, and the benefits of using the tools, but trusting them and so on. Now, this feels brand new, and it is pretty new when it for calendar years, but it's fastly evolving. So what excites you the most in regards to future internal AI adoption or AI adoption as a whole?
Well, I think for internal AI, we see the death of the famous silos. It's something that has always come back. No matter what you've tried to implement, you've seen the silos always coming back. And this has always been an issue. Silos are just not possible when you use AI. It's the end of it. And I think having one single space of truth is key. It's absolutely key. And this translates into this logic of goals and users and data and then iterations. Also, we see, I think, the place of human has really shifted from the beginning of this trend when everybody was saying, all the jobs are going to go away. We see that it's not the case. We see that we need better trained humans. We need humans who understand what's happening in organizations, who have the tools and the methods to be able to deliver, because otherwise it doesn't happen. And then, there is a lot of money and time which is being wasted. So that's a very exciting issue. That's a very promising see this maturity coming and see people now willing to test on a different mode with different methods.
And if I'm going to actually take two parts of the same question, but if you as an organization wants to stay ahead of AI adoption, what should you look like? But also, if you as a person want to stay ahead of AI adoption, what should you do?
Now people are talking about agentic readiness. So you shift from chatbots to autonomous agents and ensure that your APIs are machine readable. And then you can, you have knowledge graphs. So you build maps linking the people, the projects, and the data to achieve information singularity. So, it's interesting to look at it this way, I think. Focus on the delivery to the users, as we said. Try to get into something which is really frictionless, which is, action, just not accessing the models, but making sure that, this now gets into a mode where, friction is taken out. That is for sure the biggest challenge and the way to look at it.
Yeah, and because friction, if people come up against the friction, they're just going to try one or two times and then sort of back off and say, I do it the old way. So one question that we always ask towards the end of all these events with AI, how do you keep up with what's happening in AI and what sources do you follow?
I follow Ethan Mollick, which is a strong voice, very interesting, very free regarding the future of work and operational AI. And I also follow Pascal Bornet, who is very strong on augmented intelligence. And I tend to read a lot of what is coming out of sources like the MIT and Harvard still, because it's quality work. So I would recommend these sources.
Yeah, and we can include those sources in the follow-up email as well to the event and put it in the YouTube in the comments. JF, it's been amazing to learn from you today. I mean, it's so much that we can learn about how to use AI. Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you very much.
And how should people contact you? What is the best way?
The best way is probably through LinkedIn. And I think as well, you can also reach out via email. I'm going to put my email as well in the chat.
And what we're going to do now is that we're going to move on to the Q&A part. And I'm just going to bring Marin back.